Hi everyone, I'm Rosemary and welcome to part 3 of my high-end decor Dollar Dupe makeover series. In this video, I'll be taking on several beautiful decor pieces from West Elm. In part 1, I did 4 pieces from Anthropologie, and in part 2, 3 pieces from Pottery Barn, which I will link here and in the description if you haven't seen those yet and would like to check those out. But for now, let's jump into this video with Project 1 and a Dollar Dupe of West Elm's Shelfmate square wood and metal shelf, retailing at $60. I'm going to start with some of these Dollar Tree bamboo cutting boards. I'll actually be using 2 of those. And then also this wall hanging that has a square frame. I'm just going to be using the frame. And all I want to do is pull out the little back clips because I'm not going to need those. But you want to be real careful when you're doing this. Just kind of wiggle them back and forth. These frames are rather fragile, and if you yank too hard, it might break the frame. I'll also be using these L-shaped 2.5-inch brackets. Now, I did buy the 4-pack because I'm going to be using those on the next project as well. And what I want to do is spray both the frame and the brackets with some black metallic spray paint. Next, I went back to my cutting boards, and like I mentioned, I did take a second cutting board because I did want to make a thicker shelf. And so all I'm going to do is take the 2 bamboo cutting boards and some of my favorite tight bond glue in the thick and rich formula. It's a multi-purpose glue. I do get that at Lowe's. And I'm going to just place that liberally on the one side of the one bamboo tray and then place the 2 together. And then I'll just wipe off any glue that comes out of the seam. To make sure I get a nice and tight fit, I'm going to also just use some of these Dollar Tree clamps. Dollar Tree sells these now in the craft section, so for $1, you can't beat that. And then I'm just going to put those together. It's going to push out some more of the glue, so I just want to clean that up a little bit before I set it aside to just make sure that the glue sets and dries. And then after about an hour or so, the glue was set, and I went ahead and took the brackets off. And now I want to just take it to what I'm going to have is the back side, and I'm not going to want to add the brackets right now. I just want to make the holes because once I put the frame on, it's going to get a little bit tricky. So to get in there with a drill or a driver. And so what I did was I just decided to go ahead and put the screws in now, but then I just took them right back out again because I don't want to actually put the brackets on right now because I'll need to have them off in order to put the frame on, but at least I'll have the holes drilled and it'll be prepped and ready to go. Next, I flipped the board back over and then I just measured up from the edge 2.5 inches and drew a line across. Then I took some of my thick and quick glue again and just added some dabs there at the mark where I had drawn the line, but on the side of the board. And then that's going to be where my frame attaches. But in order to get a good sizing on the bottom, I took a 2-inch book and just going to lay the longer side of the cutting board on that book while I kind of scoot the frame in along the sides. And then by sitting the bamboo cutting board on the book, it's going to allow me to have a good sizing for the bottom portion as well. So if I put the frame down on the surface and the bamboo cutting board on the book, that'll keep me a good 2-inch distance from the bottom and allow the glue to set up in that position. And then I just went back with a Q-tip to clean up any excess glue that might be coming out there around the sides. And then to ensure that my frame was staying in an upright and straight position, I just took a shorter book and slid it on the other side underneath of the cutting board. Once the tight bond glue was set, I took some hot glue and reinforced the back of the frame where it met the shelf. Next, I attached the brackets to the bottom of the shelf, and you can see how it works out much better now with that frame in the way, that it's easier to just go ahead and add the screws and not have to kind of maneuver that drill around and just can kind of hand screw them in there since the holes were already made. Now, like with any shelf, you always want to make sure that you use the proper hardware before attaching it to the wall. And so that would include either self-anchoring screws or an anchor and screw, or if you can at least put one end into a stud, that will also work. And in the video where I made this shelf pictured here, I also offer a quick hack on finding wall studs as well as other shelf hanging instructions. So if you want to check that video out, I will link it here and in the description. And now here you can see the original and the Dollar Dupe hanging side by side. They are very similar looking, although they are somewhat different in size. You can see the size differentials there, but they're also somewhat different in price as well. And then for the next Dollar Dupe, I will again be doing another shelf, this time a reclaimed wood floating shelf, retailing for $80. For this next shelf, I'm going to be using one of these cat scratch boards from Dollar Tree. Now, this is a little bit flexible, but I will be covering it with some balsa wood, and that will make it nice and solid. Now, if you're not familiar with balsa wood panels, you can pick them up at pretty much any craft store, and the ones I'm using here are 3 inches wide, 3 feet long, and 1/8 of an inch thick. And with a coupon, you can usually get them for about $2 a panel. But before I cover my cat scratch board with the balsa wood panels, I do want to distress them a little bit. And so I got some tools here. I have pliers and a Phillips screwdriver and a flathead screwdriver, as well as even a melon baller, because what I'm trying to do is recreate the look of reclaimed wood. So quite often you'll have scrapes in the wood. There'll be different demarcations. You'll often have nail holes and things of that nature. So, just want to show how it's been weathered over time and just used for other purposes. Like, it was already nailed together, so there'll be nail holes. So again, just going through, and I'm going to do the surface of both of the boards. I'm going to go through and just kind of put holes and scrapes and different demarcations throughout the surface of both boards. For the stain, I'll be using Minwax in the color Special Walnut. I like this color for reclaimed wood type projects because it tends to go on lighter on the surface and then gives a nice dark shading in those little nooks and crannies. But since the piece I'm trying to replicate does have some further color variations, I did go ahead and also use this Varathane stain in the color Gunstock. But as you'll see, the difference is very subtle, so I think you're good to go with just the Special Walnut stain. And now here you'll see what I mean by the Special Walnut. I'm doing that one first. And as I paint it on, I'm just painting on a light coat of the stain. And as I do so, the little nooks and crannies you'll see are kind of absorbing more of the stain color, while the surface, it's just coming on lighter. And as it dries, that effect will even increase. So you'll see the darker portions in the little demarcations, and on the surface, it'll come up nice and light. And then here's where I was going to show you the other color, the Gunstock. So I've already painted it on here, but I'll show you how I did that. My camera's been misbehaving, so I will do that on this panel. Okay, so here you can see where it's already been stained with the Special Walnut, and now I'm going to just go in on those other sections that I left kind of blank and work in some of this Gunstock. And again, like I mentioned, it is very subtle. Now I'll go back to the Special Walnut, and you'll see that there really is barely any difference in the two. So you're probably good to go with just the one color, and I would definitely go with the Special Walnut. To cover my cat scratch panel, I'm going to use one of my balsa wood panels. I'm going to just lay it there on top of the cat scratch board and then just use the board itself to indicate where I have to cut. And then if you've never used balsa wood before, you'll be surprised to know that it's so wonderful you can cut it with scissors. And so I kind of cut maybe 3/4 of the way through, and I just flipped it around because I just didn't want to crack the wood. So just cut it on the other side with the scissors. You could also use a utility knife to cut this wood. Next, I took my cut panel and I applied a nice healthy portion of this Titebond Quick and Thick glue to the back side, and then I'm just going to go ahead and glue it right to the surface of my cat scratch board. To cover the small piece still remaining on the top, I'm going to go ahead and grab board number 2. I put the cut piece of board number 1 to the side, and I'm going to now use board number 2 to finish off just that skinny piece that is still left over. So all I did was just align the two pieces up, flip it over. I'm again going to use the cat scratch board as my guide, and I'm going to just mark there where I need to cut. Now the thing about this though is that I'm not going to cut it off there at the length of the cat scratch board. I'm going to take this line all the way down the 3 foot of the board and cut there. I'm going to cut that off camera and I'll be back. And now here you can see how I cut the second board all the way down the full length of the board, just having the skinny piece that's going to fill in the back portion of the shelves, both top and bottom. But I will now just kind of lay that in. I'm going to put that on the side that has the machine cut, so I don't have any gapping. So it's machine cut to machine cut. And then I'll cut it off there at the bottom for the length. And then once that piece is glued on, I'll flip it over and repeat the process on the back side using the remaining piece of board 1 and also the remaining skinny piece of board 2. And then I'll just set it aside for the glue to set, and I'm going to also add some books to the top to weight it down, make sure everything stays in place and the seams don't curl. Once the glue was set on the main piece, it was time to do the sides of the shelf. And so I'm going to be using that wider piece from board 2, and I'm going to just use the shelf itself to measure where I need to cut the side. Then I'll attach the side pieces, again using the Titebond glue. Now, I should have actually added some hot glue there because I actually had to stand there and hold it, but some hot glue would have helped to keep it in place while the other glue set up. And then for the front piece, I'm again going to use that remaining piece of board number 2, and I'm going to just lay it straight across the front, making sure to go flush with the side pieces so that they are actually covered, the ends of those are covered. And I'll again use the quick and thick glue to attach the front piece, but I'm also going to add some hot glue in between for that quick hold. To add the brackets, I'm going to use both E6000 glue and the screws. So what I did was I put some E6000 there at the bottom of the bracket. Then I'm going to take a screw and add some Titebond glue to both the screw hole and the screw threads, and then just go ahead and screw the screw into the bracket. And then attach the brackets to both sides, and then I would let this sit at least 48 hours before hanging. Also, I just wanted to point out that because of the longer sides, it does create somewhat of a false bottom so that the brackets kind of tuck up underneath, and it does have the appearance, for the most part, of being a floating shelf. And then a couple coats of polyurethane will complete the look. And now here is the finished project next to the original. And of course the original is solid wood, and it is about 1/3 larger in length and double the width, but the Dollar Dupe is still pretty sizable at 16 inches long and 4 inches wide. Now, I wouldn't go putting any textbooks or heavy potted plants on it, but it certainly can handle things like photos, canvases, or small vases like the ones shown here. Next up is this adorable Pom Pom storage basket, retailing for $49. I'm going to start with this straw hat from the Dollar Tree. Now, this is a technique I saw from Karem at DIY Karem. She used to be in the event with Karem, and she has some beautiful, beautiful items that she makes, as well as some great techniques. And one of them is to use these straw hats to create basket-like creations, different little holders and different types of things. And so all you need to do is kind of start it there with some scissors, cut that original piece, and then it kind of just pulls off by itself. Now, I did have one hat that I did have to continue to kind of clip along. So if you have that hat, don't think there's something wrong with you. It's I don't know, it's just this one came apart super easy, and then the other one I had to kind of clip along the whole way. But I did use 2 hats for this project, and hopefully if you do this project, you get the easy come apart ones, so it's not that much of a hassle. And then once I had my hat taken apart, I did want to stain it, so I just rolled it up to kind of keep it in place. And I'm going to be staining with this golden pecan color. Now, in my previous DIY on Anthropologie, I used another shade called Gunstock. I just happen to have a whole bunch of stains, but if you happen to do that one and you're like, oh my goodness, no. Gunstock will work just as well with this. This one's just a little bit more yellow than the Gunstock, but that will work as well if you happen to have that one on hand, and you'll get a very similar color to this one here. And so I just continued to, as I stained it, I also rolled it up because it was just kind of getting out of hand. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And then when it was all stained, I just set it aside to dry. Next, I'm going to take one of the Dollar Tree mesh waste paper baskets, and I want to wrap these hat strands. That's what I'm going to call it, a hat strand. I don't know what I was going to call it, but you know what I'm talking about. Wrap the hat strand around, and I'm going to do single layers. So I just measured the hat strand around, and now I'm going to apply that first layer with some E6000. So the very bottom will have E6000, but that's all. And then I just put the E6000 there all along the mesh at the bottom, and then attach that first hat strand row there with the E6000. And then I just want to set that aside and let that fully dry before I start with my next rounds, which again, I will just measure a single strand around, cut there, and then add this second strand now with hot glue. And I just am gluing there at the very top and overlaying just the very bottom of the second strand. And then here it is half the way up. Now I just wanted to point out that I did use a piece of the hat strand where it does bend where the brim meets the rest of the hat. That's probably not advisable. You should probably just skip that section of the hair strand because it does bend up and it gives a little bulgy look. And then here you can see after all of the hat strands have been attached, and I did just do everything in one starting and stopping spot, so there's just that one seam down the back, and I didn't cover the bottom because I didn't want it tore up, and you can't see it anyway, but this way I figured it would stay nicer and not get ripped up on the bottom. And you can see how nice it looks. I think it looks great just like this without the pom-poms. And it's such a nice size basket as well because it is one of those waste paper size baskets, so you can fit a lot in there. And I like how you can also has that kind of wicker look coming out the back, although I think the black basket might have been the better option here. Now to make the pom-poms, Dollar Tree did have some of this caramel colored yarn, and I thought it made a pretty good match and would have made some really cute pom-poms. Also maybe some twine would be a good option. However, when I was in Dollar Tree, I found these. Oh my goodness, how cute are these? They remind me of those Tribbles from the Trouble with Tribbles episode of Star Trek. Oh my gosh, I love that episode. It's so funny. Anyway, I just thought they were so cute, and they're actually hair elastic pom-poms. So I found them in the hair section at Dollar Tree, and they do come 2 to a pack. And all I did was cut off the hair elastic part, and I just put them right there, plop them right on. Now these do bring the cost of it up a little bit. It would be much cheaper to just use the yarn, but I just love them so much I had to get them. Now I think these look super cute, but they are a little large for the basket, so I did want to cut them down a bit, so I decided to give them a little haircut. And I'm just cutting all around. Now, of course, this would have been much easier had I done this before gluing them to the side of the basket, but I'll do that for the other side. And if you do it, I would suggest you do this as well. But you can see how much cuter they look, trimmed down a little bit and better sized to the basket. And then here is the finished project along with the original. And you can see that it is pretty comparable in size. That's pretty nice. Now with those hair elastic pom-poms, it is a little bit more expensive at about $8. But if you did the yarn pom-poms, this project will come in at about $5. For the last West Elm Dollar Dupe, I'll be doing the Bishop Pedestal Planter, retailing at $130. For this one, I'll be using this bucket from the Dollar Tree, this little Easter basket bucket, and the handle just pops right off. Now this is very similar to the one that we did for Anthropology last video, but this time I want to remove these little edges here. They bugged me the last time that I left those on, so I'm going to try to give it a try this time. And I'm doing it with a utility knife. It's really not the best process. I kind of just cut down from the top there, and that kind of separated the little bucket attachment from the side of the bucket. And then I went back with some wire cutters and also tried to get up underneath and clip there. It really wasn't the greatest process, but I was able to get it off fairly well. To finish it off a bit, I just took some sandpaper and sanded down those rough edges. Then I used the sandpaper to also lightly sand the surface of the bucket so that I could prepare it for painting. From here, I'm just going to take my bucket and this white bowl I also got from Dollar Tree and give them a light powder coat with this white spray paint. And then this is what I mean by a powder coat, just a light coating. You can see it here over the image, just a light coating of the spray paint. And then I'm going to do 3 coats of this white chalk paint. And then once those coats were on and dry, I just attached the 2 pieces together with some E6000 glue. And then once that glue is dry, I'll take the entire piece outside for several coats of this gloss white spray paint. And then here's the finished project next to the original, a quick and easy Dollar Dupe to get that beautiful high-end West Elm look for just about $4. Well, I hope you have enjoyed part 3 of this high-end decor Dollar Dupe series. Please check back next week to see which high-end store I take on next. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give a big thumbs up and let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. If you would like to check out the other videos in the series, I will post them here, as well as a link in the description box. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.